We live in a world consumed by an endless noise of self-justification. People are constantly rushing to defend their actions, over-explaining their intentions, or begging for a crumb of attention from those who have already decided not to care. But a true Stoic warrior refuses to participate in this desperate economy. A Stoic does not chase validation, does not beg for love, and does not explain themselves to a world that feeds on conflict. They understand a fundamental truth. Your silence is not a void. It is an unshakable superpower. When you are hurt, ghosted, or disrespected, your immediate emotional impulse screams at you to react. You want to send that long paragraph, demand a reason, or force the other person to acknowledge your worth. But that rush to explain is weakness pretending to be courage. The moment you chase someone's approval or demand their understanding, you hand over your power. You are effectively telling them that your inner peace depends on how they choose to respond. But that is not peace, that is a prison. This brings us to the core topic of our first philosophical truth. Silence makes them feel your absence, not just hear your words. There is a striking paradox in human behavior. The more you explain, the less people listen. The more you chase, the further they run. But the moment you go completely quiet and withdraw your energy, you force them to confront the empty space you left behind. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus mastered silence not because they were cold, but because they understood that your dignity should never have to scream. When you refuse to react to disrespect, your silence acts as a mirror, reflecting the other person's actions back onto themselves. It says, "I value my soul too, much to argue for my worth." This quiet detachment terrifies manipulators because they lose the emotional control they thought they had over you. By stepping out of the noise, you stop begging people to see your value and begin reclaiming the control you so freely gave away. Building upon that detachment, we arrive at our second crucial topic. When you stay silent, you hear the truth louder. The world around us is deafening, but intentional silence allows you to listen not to others, but to yourself. In moments of heartbreak, betrayal, or confusion, most people seek temporary fixes by venting to friends, scrolling endlessly, or confronting the person who hurt them. They hope a single conversation will heal a deeply broken dynamic. But real clarity never emerges from external chaos. It rises only in stillness. When you fall completely silent, your mind calms down, and the reality of your situation surfaces without distortion. You begin to hear the painful yet necessary truths: that they never truly respected you, that you stayed too long out of fear, and that you don't need their closure to find your peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that if we are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to our estimate of it, which we have the power to revoke at any moment. To master this stance, you must understand the difference between emotional noise and Stoic values. When you are hurt, your emotions demand that you chase and explain. But in silence, your values whisper that you must hold your dignity and protect your peace. You do not gain respect by screaming louder. You gain it by staying grounded while everyone else spirals in drama. Silence is not a passive stance. It is an active, observant filter. The longer you remain quiet, the more people reveal their true intentions through their actions rather than their promises. You no longer have to ask if someone cares. Their presence or absence will answer for them. By choosing quiet discipline over reactive anger, you stop reacting to life's provocations and begin responding with deliberate, unshakable purpose. Once you begin listening to the truth in stillness, you inevitably confront our third major topic. Begging for closure is a form of self-betrayal. We all crave that final honest conversation or the peaceful ending that makes sense of our pain. But here is the brutal reality. If someone truly respected you, you would never have to beg them for closure. They would have offered it with honesty. If they chose to leave you in confusion, your silence is the only closure you need. Epictetus advised us to embody our philosophy rather than just explaining it. When you chase closure, you end up explaining your pain to someone who has already made peace with hurting you. You enter a toxic cycle. You demand answers, They respond with coldness, and you feel even smaller than before. Needing them to validate why they treated you poorly means handing them total control over your healing process. Real closure is not something given by another person. It is a gift of acceptance you grant yourself. When you accept that no amount of explanation will make a disrespectful person suddenly care, your power returns instantly. Real closure happens the moment you stop waiting for a conversation that will never take place. You realize that those who hurt you do not need to understand your worth. You do. The people who walked away do not need a formal goodbye. You can grant it without saying a single word. Going silent is the ultimate act of self-preservation. It allows you to stop writing unsent messages, stop rehearsing past arguments in your head, and stop seeking resolution in toxic spaces. Your silence becomes the sacred boundary where your self-respect can finally breathe again, preparing you to observe human behavior without falling for deceitful words. This self-respect leads seamlessly to our fourth fundamental topic. Silence exposes what words try to hide. Words can be beautiful, but they are frequently deceptive. People say what sounds right, offering quick justifications, empty apologies, and manipulative promises. But silence cannot lie. Ralph Waldo Emerson captured this when he wrote that what you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. The Stoics judged people not by their speeches, but by their long-term patterns. When you stop explaining yourself and step back into quiet observation, you grant people the space to reveal their authentic nature, and they always will. The person who genuinely values you will notice your quietness and reach out with honesty. The person who merely used you will vanish because you are no longer supplying them with energy. The manipulator will become angry, not because you harmed them, but because your silence signals a complete loss of control over you. Words create illusions, but silence reveals reality. You don't need to confront bad behavior or force dramatic confrontations. Simply withdraw your speech and watch how they react. Observe who checks in when you are quiet, who disappears when you stop overgiving, and who becomes frustrated when they can no longer provoke a reaction from you. This process can be painful, but it is entirely necessary for your freedom. People can easily argue with your opinions, but they cannot argue with your stillness. When you remain quiet, you stop feeding their emotional games. You start trusting patterns over promises and energy over explanations. This is the core of Stoicism. It is not cold or unfeeling, but deeply discerning and emotionally disciplined. It allows truth to speak loudly without needing a single word. When you stop relying on words to expose others, you discover our fifth principle. Not explaining yourself is the highest form of confidence. When someone misunderstands or misjudges you, the natural egoic response is to defend your name. You want to say, "That's not who I am." But a Stoic does not chase understanding from external sources. They seek alignment within themselves. Explaining yourself to those who have already made up their minds is not strength. It is the fear of being misjudged. Marcus Aurelius advised us not to waste what remains of our lives speculating about others unless it serves a direct mutual benefit. Every time you try to convince someone of your worth, your honesty, or your loyalty, you spend your finite energy on their subjective judgment. The person who feels no need to explain themselves is at peace because their intentions are clean and their actions speak for themselves. Their value does not require translation. Choosing this level of detachment will inevitably upset people. You may be called cold, selfish, or arrogant. You might even lose relationships you once held dear. But losing people who never truly saw your value is not a loss. It is an alignment. Most people do not want to understand you. They simply want to control your narrative. When your silence breaks that narrative, their anger reveals their true motives. When you stop explaining, you begin leading your life with quiet authority. You stop justifying your boundaries, explaining why you stepped away, or defending your right to peace. Those who belong in your life will understand your silence without needing subtitles. Your quiet presence becomes an unshakable boundary that filters out chaos and protects your inner sanctuary. This brings us to our sixth and final philosophical pillar. Your detachment in silence is what teaches the ultimate lesson. There is something uniquely powerful about a person who walks away not with slamming doors or dramatic speeches, but in quiet, total detachment. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When you stop responding, you leave the other person alone in the quiet room of their own mind, forced to sit with the memory of how they treated you. Your quiet detachment carries a clear message. I no longer need to prove myself to you. I will not stay where I'm not valued. Most people are accustomed to emotional reactions, begging, and dramatic fights. When you offer total silence instead, you exit with absolute dignity. They expect you to chase them, but your refusal to return forces them to confront the reality of what they lost. People rarely learn from verbal arguments. They learn from distance. If they learn the lesson, that is fine. If they don't, that is fine too, because the lesson was ultimately for your own soul. You learned that your peace does not require anyone's permission, and that silence is often your greatest healing tool. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you care too much about your own spirit to leave it in an environment where it is diminished. You don't need to shout that you are done. You can simply be done. We have explored how silence restores your power, exposes deceit, and builds unshakable confidence. You do not need to chase, beg, or over-explain to be worthy. Your value was never in their hands to begin with. Let your silence be your final boundary, not out of bitterness, but out of deep, unshakable self-respect.